Welcome to the August 7th Coordination Circle and General Business Meeting for the Lifeboat Academy in our new summer configuration where we're consolidating things at least through August. And as is our custom, we still start with a land acknowledgement. Is there anybody who would like to do it, or shall I?
Go ahead.
So shall I. We begin by acknowledging the land as a reminder to us that the land was here before us. The land will continue long after we are gone. And everything that we experience, everything that we need to survive and thrive comes from the land and returns to the land. And we start our meetings with this acknowledgement as a reminder for us to be in right relations and to keep things in a healthy perspective. So everything that we do, including this meeting, comes from the land and returns to the land and ultimately needs to be in service to the land. And so in doing so, we are dipping into deep indigenous traditions that go back many generations in many different cultures, each with their own way of bringing our attention back to our right position in things. And so we offer our thanks and our gratitude to all of the wisdom keepers who have kept this knowledge alive and who are generously sharing this knowledge. And we recognize it as a counterpoint to how most of us were raised and to sort of the dominant Western culture that seems to have forgotten this. And so we also, in acknowledging the land, we acknowledge a responsibility, an obligation to do what we can, where we can, when we can, to make things a little bit better, to leave the place better than we found it, to heal any harms which may have happened, and to, at the very least, do everything we can to maintain right relations with ourself, with our communities, our human communities, and with our more than human relatives. So, in doing so, I invite us all to take a moment to ground ourselves in a very real and literal way. So, take a moment where you are. You might close your eyes if that feels comfortable. And just take a moment to be a body in a seat. Feel the gentle tug of gravity pulling your body down to the land, to the ground, and the support coming up through the earth and through your chair to hold you up. You might become aware of your breath, which is always there, whether you notice or not, a constant reminder of reciprocity and interconnection. Breathing in oxygen that was exhaled by our green relatives and using that oxygen to power every cell in our bodies. And then on the exhale, relaxation and release as we let go of the carbon dioxide that will eventually be inhaled by our green relatives. And just take a moment to relax into that sensation of relaxation on the out breath and energy in on the in breath. And when you're ready, just take one nice big deep breath, drawing in your connection to all your relations. And then on the exhale, to the extent possible, let go of whatever might keep you from being present with us today. And then in your own time, come join us back in the circle. All right. So, anyone have a good check-in question? I think I might have done this last time, but I still like it. Um, what element is calling to you? Is there any element that seems to be connecting? Earth, wind, water, fire, metal, stone. Over to you, April. Oh, and the circle today is April, Ronnie, Rolan, and me, which I was typing, so I thought you heard me typing. Over to you, April.
Water. I'm all for it in every way. Over to Ronnie.
Also water. I moved in yesterday and then my next door neighbor's toilet flooded our floor. So I had half an inch of water in my entire space.
Wow.
It was definitely a resilience moment, a collapse moment. Um, and kind of biblical in a way. So flood.
Only if you could part it.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, so definitely water. Over to Roland.
The element of surprise. Over to Ben.
Bahaha. Uh, I think, well, is sun an element? I'm going to go with sun, whether it's an element or not. The warmth of the solar radiation. I've now made that a thing. All right. So, we are in our slightly revised format. So we are both coordination circle and taking care of business. And so I want to check in on how we want to use this time together. I'm going to make a proposal that we do spend a little time with the North Star. And the agenda items that are on my radar are checking in on the Gumboot boot camps and some of the work that we've been doing following up and preparing for the Gumboot boot camp, including an almost ready to go proposal for restorative practices. And then the other thing is checking in on outreach around the bylaws and fundraising and that sort of thing. And so let's just go around the circle. And is there anything that you would like to add to the agenda and or any feelings on how would this time be most useful for you? Over to you, April.
Definitely North Star stuff. And then exactly what you suggested and what you had already sent in the email, I think, are all things I'm really curious about. So on to Ronnie.
I feel excited to hear about the restorative practice proposal because that's something that I'm always thinking about for other spaces I'm involved in. Um, I feel I'm very discombobulated this week, so I think this will help kind of ground me back in routine with Lifeboat and just yeah, help me reorient since I've moved. Everything this week has been crazy. So I'm catching up, I guess. I also have a pot of food on the stove that I meant to have done earlier. Alas, I will need to go check it in a few minutes. So if I leave, that's why. Over to Roland.
Uh, since we were collapsing the guilds, um, and I can't remember if you mentioned anything around the bylaws and reaching out. You did. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. That's the only thing that well, and a little individual update on what we've each been doing because we're still caretakers for different guilds. So if there's any updates around individual guilds or caretaker updates for the different guilds. Over to you, Ben.
Cool. All right. Well, then let's get into our North Star. And I'm thinking let's just do tried and true. We'll do our what are we trying to accomplish together? Why is that important? And where are we now? And I will share the screen and take notes as we're doing it. And you can always, and we'll do 2 rounds. So we'll sharing round, and you can address one or all or some combination of the questions, whatever is calling to you. And we'll do 1 round for sharing and then 1 round for responses to what we're hearing. And you can always pass and we'll come back to you. So April, over to you.
Sorry, I missed the point. Are we dealing with all 3 of the questions, or
Any combination, you get one turn to share. You can address one or all of them, whatever combination you feel called to.
thank you. Well, I'm going to address what are we trying to accomplish together, and I think I could say we're trying to create a not business as usual way of surviving and thriving. And we're doing that through some particular systems and ways of coming together. This is important because it allows us the space and the techniques, I guess, to ground ourselves and to keep moving forward. And where we are now is at a really important landmark place, I think, for this whole endeavor. And I think we should recognize that, as well as the work that continues to be done. And I also want to recognize the folks that have been doing the nitty-gritty around things like bylaws and some of that kind of work that I'm very grateful not to be part of, but I'm also very grateful that someone has come to grips with that and has produced something that, to me, makes great sense. Over to Ronnie.
We are modeling what comes next, specifically by focusing on methods and practices that are repeatable, replicable, that others can use. And it's important because it's important because there are people who want to do things differently and are concerned about the future, but are not sure how to do it. And they need ways that are reliable and resilient. And we are doing outreach both for boot camp and the bylaws in order to cultivate more interest in not only being at the pharmastery, but also investing in the project. And well, investing in the experiment, project/experiment, so that it can continue. Because if without investment, it's not going to be sustainable. Over to Roland.
Yeah, we're experimenting when putting into practice ideas to help us learn to be more human. Over to Ben.
I have been revising or refining the narrative that goes with the PowerPoint. And so there are phrases that are resonating with me. I really like creating a bubble in capitalism and converting privilege into connection. And I think that that's kind of the foundation for all of the things that we're talking about. That different way of working is one that where we hold back the harmful assumptions and habits of late stage capitalism, which get in the way of being able to collaborate. And why is that important? Well, for a number of reasons, shit is hitting the fan, and um, and and I think as a species, we're kind of caught with our pants down. Um, so it's important because uh, a growing number of people, I think it's kind of what an amendment to what Ronnie was saying about there are people who want to do things differently and are concerned about the future. And I think that is another way of saying that is there are a growing number of people who are waking up to the how far along the trajectory we are, and all of the feels that come with that. So and I think that's where we are now. I am feeling my intuition is that there has been a watershed that we have moved through. A lot of our interactions with new folks now are really positive right from the get-go. And I think because we're able to, I think it's a combination. One is we're getting better at figuring out how to say it, and the other is people are more receptive because of how the world is changing around them. And that feels pretty important to me. I agree. I think it's also what April was saying about we're in a kind of transition, a kind of important milestone transition spot, and good to recognize. And causes me absolute terror, by the way. But this is the nature of, I think, this kind of stuff. So we've each had a chance to do our first share, and now we go around again and get an opportunity to respond to or reflect on what we're hearing, what stands out to you, anything resonating, any patterns you're noticing, etc. April, over to you.
Well, I'm noticing what other people said sounds really cogent and appropriate. And I'm aware that meeting at 4:30 at the end of a day for me means that my articulateness has disappeared somewhere. So I'm noticing that for myself. But I'm also really happy to hear what people have to say in any of the three questions, because I just think it's true. And it just helps me to remember several facets of what we're working on. And it helps me to keep perspective, which I find one of the hardest things to do, particularly over time. And so I'm really grateful for other people's reflections and the seriousness that you take this with, but also the growth that I've seen over time with the way that we talk about things, the way that we talk together. Over to Verani.
It just seems like we're so clear on what we're doing. And at least in this moment, not struggling to communicate it, at least amongst each other. And kind of like what April said, a lot of work and time has gone into coming to that clarity. So I appreciate and acknowledge that. Over to Roland.
Yeah, ditto. I'm just hearing a lot of saying the same things in different words and different lengths. And that's encouraging. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add. And I think that that is there does feel to be this coming together. Who knew the system works? So we've had a chance to revisit our North Star, and we can come back to our agenda. I don't think we need to go over calendar or seasonal plan at this point. We're kind of in between. And I actually have some thoughts on sort of using sometime late September as a way of, kind of refocusing and moving the next level forward. Okay, so some quick updates on Gumboot boot camps. So Laura left last Thursday, and that was the last of our woofers to leave. So we've had our first week of having the place to ourselves. And I think we've done a lot of processing on the various lessons that we've learned. And we've started to put some of that processing into concrete forms. And in addition, we're starting now to organize what the August boot camp is going to look like. And I was so hopeful there. For the briefest moment, it looked like we had 5 people interested who were all interested around the same time. And then one person wants to move their time later, and another person wants to come forward, and we don't know about. We lost. I feel bad that we've not maintained good contact with Heather Nugent. So I just reached out to her today to confirm what her plans are, if she still has plans for coming here, because we have not been as communicative as we should have been. And but the long story short, I think we still have 5 people who are interested, but will probably be coming at largely separate times. But we just met with Samaya this morning, who just seems lovely and totally aligned with what we are offering. And is the person who is interested in coming soonest. So we're going to get back to her with how soon do we think we're ready to take people back in. And yeah, so I think, and part of the question for me for the August boot camp is there are a couple things like the update to the welcome guide and having the badges actually like printed out, so that we have some of those visual things available for when we're accepting new people. So I'm going to hold off on the restorative practices proposal, because I think we might want to get into some of the details there, but I'm going to pass it over to Roland to see any other updates, kind of general updates around the boot camp stuff from your perspective.
Well, yeah. I think so. The woofers, I think my perspective, and I think that we agreed on this, is that it's really challenging to do boot camps with woofers. Their expectations are a little bit different, and the ideal would be to mix up a few woofers with mainly people who are coming to the boot camp through the Lifeboat Academy. Um, and also as a way of starting to build up and encourage the paying it forward, which we can't really do with the woofers. Um,
Right.
so that's something. And I think it's probably because of the challenge of getting people to come at the same time, it might we've kind of touched on, but we haven't really talked at length about having around the boot camps having blocks of time available to woofers so that um, on the woofing calendar to try to make it easier to get people to come to arrive at the same time. So there's little detaily bits I think to look into and to talk through to help to um, define how the boot camps work uh, in relation to woofers and to try to get people in general to come at the same time. That's what I wanted to add. Back to you, Ben.
Which of course is nothing we can do by August, by now.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think that is, and I think that links into the seeking investment to be able to kind of that's part of the challenge we have here is that we're doing everything um, on a, building the plane as we're flying it kind of thing, which is making some of these a lot more challenging. All right, cool. So any questions or observations for April or Ronnie?
So, could I just ask for the people that are showing interest in boot camp, do you have an idea of how they found out about it? Are they mostly people we knew in other contexts, or were already on a list somewhere, or
So of the five, two are Pam and husband, and one is Heather. So those are all people who found out about it or interested in it because of the lifeboat specifically.
right?
And then two found out about it from the Woofer site.
Okay.
Both we haven't met with Lucy, but we'll meet with her next week. They both expressed specific interest in what we're doing as part of the Lifeboat Academy. And Samaya actually did all sorts of research on us. She let us know that
Hmm.
including reading some of my Medium posts.
Well,
So she did some, like independent followed breadcrumbs to get
yeah.
more information. So she looked at the
Wow.
website. She read some Medium posts. She read our Woofer posting as well. And from the conversation today, I think what we're talking about really resonates with her. So I would say in terms of like where they're coming from, half and half. But even the Woofer site, there's a lot of affinity with what we're doing. So the problem is with using woofers for the boot camp is not that they aren't into it. It's just some of the other expectations that come with it, like there's no pay it forward um, and they're not all into it. So
Right.
most of the woofers we get are into it, and some are just looking for a place to crash, more than that. I don't mean to be that dismissive, but some are really just that's how they're traveling around. Um, yeah. Any other questions, comments? All right, cool. Well then, so the restorative practices proposal, I have the link there, and I'll actually put it in the chat too, so that hopefully, let me make sure that I've got. Oh, hang on, let me change the permission settings. All right. So there's a Google document. Oh shoot, that's the wrong one. Sorry. So I started off, hang on, trying to do too many things at once. There we go. All right. So, and actually it's kind of, I started off actually writing the agreement that would go into the document, into our general operating agreements, and then realized as I was doing that I was messing up the process, and it really should be as a proposal. And actually it really helped. It makes more sense to write it as a proposal. I was having a problem writing the agreement because I wanted to give context, but it didn't make sense in the document and that sort of thing. But um, you're still looking at Asana, right? Or are you seeing the document?
Asana.
Okay. And I think I'm not gonna share. You can look at the document, but I don't think it's important right now for us to see the document. And the general gist of it is we've been talking about this for a while. We all recognize, and part of Eleanor Ostrom's thing about commons is we need to have a quick and fair conflict resolution process that's identified. And even though we have all talked about it in general as being restorative and based on relationships and that sort of the not punitive and not bureaucratic, we have had some challenges, Roland and I, with people at the pharmacery who it feels like are not living up to the agreements, and we didn't really have a clear way of addressing it. We didn't have something that we could point to and say, this is how it works. So that's been the motivation, is to really have something in writing that we can point to. And in thinking it through, that also it was useful to think it through in terms of our direct experiences, because it's Roland and I who are the staff, for want of a better word. There's a power imbalance that makes discussion difficult around
Yeah.
it, especially if there's a situation where it's kind of a he said, she said situation where we think the agreements are being violated, but they think we're violating the agreements, and how does that play out? And so thinking through, how does it get reported? Who does it get reported to? How does it get processed in a way that feels fair and addresses those kind of challenges? So the for me, I kind of came to the conclusion that actually what we're talking about is Evelyn Zellerer's Peace Circle process. And she has these nice, clear stages. The first one is suitability. Is the Peace Circle an appropriate response to the situation and people capable of it? If so, there's some preparation work to make sure that everyone understands what they're getting into and they agree to it. And you kind of negotiate how the circle itself is going to work so that it feels safe and fair. And then actually hosting the circle, where the goal of the circle is to come to a new agreement that remedies whatever the situation is. And then following that, there's some follow-up, and that's part of the written agreement. And for the most part, it matches so much what we do generally that it's kind of a special case of how we use circles, and how we do things, but it's not really radically different. Um, and but to add some formalization to it so that it's clear and the expectations are clear. We decided or we're proposing that stewards and caretakers are all gateway keepers for a complaint. So that you don't have to necessarily, like, if there's an issue, somebody could bring it to April without having to, it could be about me, so it could go to anybody else. And that part of the proposal is that there are some expectations before you make a complaint, and all of the terminology, we are looking for help in appropriate words. But that before you make the complaint, there's some check-in questions. Is it really happening? Is it a pattern? Checking in with yourself. Are you projecting? Do you have some responsibility in this? Not that we're expecting that people will have to solve it on their own, but that it's just a good process to have people do a quick check before they go off reporting. And then once they report, whoever gets the report, it basically is charged with asking those same questions. Is this a pattern? What are the behaviors? What are the specific agreements that you think are in question? What are the behaviors that you're seeing that indicate that? What have you done already to address the situation? And then they take that information, the gatekeeper brings it to the Heartwork Guild. And we thought Heartwork makes the most sense since it is the keeper of the agreement. So it should also be the keeper of the resolution process when it feels like the agreements aren't being kept. And that the gatekeeper makes an initial assessment. I think this is probably needs the process, or maybe this doesn't need we don't need to invoke the formal process, but that the Heartwork Guild is the one that makes that decision, so that it's a guild decision. If for some reason Heartwork can't, it would get kicked up to coordination. And the other
Right.
thing is that it would be the one specific place where we go in camera. So the guild, before discussing it, the guild would, to the extent possible, protect the confidentiality of the people involved in it. So at that moment, once that comes up, then there's no record keeping until it comes to the agreement that comes from it. I think that's the gist of it. And I'll pause and throw it back to Roland and say, is there anything I missed or anything that a thing you want to add?
I think that was pretty complete. It's what we talked about.
So the proposal basically outlines, and in terms of process, we're thinking this is a guild. This is the next step is for this to go to Heartwork to talk through the proposal, and then if so, Heartwork will forward the proposal to the coordination circle. And in part because this would involve a change to the driver statement for the Heartwork Guild. It would change the responsibility. It would add a new responsibility to Heartwork, which would be conflict resolution. And that means it would also add 2 badges. I'm proposing 2 badges to Heartwork. One would be, and right now in a tongue-in-cheek way, I'm calling it a complainer's badge. But that process of checking in with yourself, are you projecting? Is it really happening? That's badgeable, and probably a good thing for lots of people to have. And then there is like a peace circle keeper. So people who can actually run one of the peace circles. And anyhow, so Heartwork next to formalize the proposal. Proposal goes to the coordination circle. At that point, then it becomes an agreement. And yeah, so I think let's do at least one round. So just thoughts, reactions, questions, etc. Over to you, April.
I think that's good. I think you've thought through sort of the process quite well. I want to look at it again and sort of get it in my head and get my head around it. It sounds to me fair and complete at this telling, but I need to absorb it a bit more. I also think that those of us that are going to be either circle keepers or whatever else we could be in terms of roles need to practice that a bit and
Mm.
somehow get some feedback on some stuff around that. And I think that this is a good and necessary step forward. I do get always a little worried about these things and get the usual anxieties that everybody does in faced with conflict. But I think it's a really necessary and fair step. On to Ronnie.
I'm feeling a little confused about the connection between the peace circle and the 6 steps of enforcement. Is the 6 steps before the circle?
Ignore that. That
Oh,
was like
okay.
initial thoughts that were the
Okay, okay.
yeah. And actually, well, I'll fill in the context there, which is we were one of the things that I came across when I was in Wisconsin was called progressive discipline, and it's a pretty standard HR thing. And I like it because the initial assumption is there's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And then after the first step is to clarify expectations. The second step is you assume that it's either a resource or a skill mismatch. So then you work on providing supports around resources and skills, and only then does it turn into like you're a bad person and you need to be punished.
Okay.
So that was just, I was throwing that in there. That's when I realized, the proposal was the right way of going, and I just abandoned that
Got it.
document.
Okay. That helps. So, yes. Um yeah, so this okay. So yeah, I've read the Peace Circle handbook, or I guess it was the Little Book of Circle, whatever. I have the book and I've read it.
Uh-huh.
And this looks great. Um I have a question which is more of an open-ended question slash attention that I've observed, which is when I have been in groups and brought forth a process because people were saying we need a process. 0 people wanted to put in the time and energy it takes to collect all of this information, to decide who's going to do what, who needs to be in the circle, all of that. So it seems to be, oh, it's a lot of work, especially for people who are already stretched thin and doing a lot. And so I'm not saying this shouldn't happen. I think it absolutely is essential. And how do we navigate the fact that it's work, it's effort, and especially if the person perhaps who's caused harm is less than willing to show up for it, it can feel like a very thankless process. So I'm just kind of wondering, how do we navigate that? What's the incentive? Um, yeah, those kinds of questions. Over to Roland.
Uh, I think I'm going to pass just because I think there are that in the um, uh, CJ process, which is we're sort of drawing on the CJ process, there are answers to all of that. And I think Ben is better placed to respond than I am. So I'm just going to pass.
I think the really good questions, and one thing is that there would be a strong motivation for people to resolve a conflict if it's an ongoing thing. Um, so that's where the motivation is for some people to, well, and the other thing too is it's like April was saying, and we have found this with the CJ group. I found this with the CJ group, is it's a really interesting process that people get kind of addicted to. Like there is a magic to it. There's a magic in the conflict resolution of the circle that we haven't really touched on much. We kind of get a feeling of it when things come together. So anyhow, I think that I think there will be some people who will be motivated that this is a skill they want to practice. And so they'll actually be excited for an opportunity to do some of it. In the CJ group, when we have something that comes in, we have no problem finding people who are willing to do the stuff. And we'll see. Like, and the other thing too is it ties in a little bit with the pitch around the investment, because having a commitment pool process where, yeah, you're putting in work, but that counts like any other work and you get credits for it. And, so you could either be working on conflict resolution or you could be out shoveling shit, literally. So which would you choose? And some people will choose the shit, and it all needs to get done, right? So anyhow, those would be my sort of quick answers to that. Something, and the part of the thing that's interesting in the process, and we talk about one of the pieces we took from Nora Roberts around, it's you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here kind of thing, where if you and I think this is then also, how do we onboard this? How do we present this where if you come, you are agreeing to this process if there's a conflict, and if you refuse to participate in the process, you can't stay here. And it really is that fundamental. And especially because the more I thought about it, the more this is just the agreements. Like, this is just coming back to, are you accountable to the agreements that you have freely chosen? And if not, it's just a non-negotiable. You can't have a group where one person thinks the rules don't apply to them, as we're experiencing in some countries nearby or in. Anyhow, I think that is part of that, where it's a little bit, people have the choice to participate in the process freely, but if not, you're not staying. And that's just the choice you make. So let's do once, because we had some interesting things come up. Let's just do once to like close the loop on this, and then we can move on to the investment stuff. So April, over to you. And you can always pass if you've got nothing.
Well, just to say, I think the non-negotiable part of it is non-negotiable. And I think it needs to be written in wherever it is that there might be agreements written down, whether it's on a piece of paper on the wall or where, that this needs to be written down. And if there is something that people, where they sign their names to an agreement when they're coming to do whatever, then this needs to be in there. So it's clear and clear and clear, and you can point to it. And I think if there's some way to reinforce the idea that the sooner that we do at least the start of this process, the better for all of us, in terms of finding the misunderstandings, and B, the resource or skill lack pretty quickly, it's important, I think. And if people even start to do that regularly, that's such good training for when you have to go farther down the line in the process. Over to Ronnie.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. That was all really helpful, especially highlighting that it's all based on agreements and the importance of getting clear on what's non-negotiable from the start. Because if we don't do that, and I'm thinking about another group that I'm in, if we don't do that and then a conflict happens, it's going to be really confusing what even happened in the first place and what people's expectations were that were not matching. So yeah, I took good notes, so thank you. Over to Roland.
There's also we have good relations with the CJ group for the Southern Gulf Islands. So that's also a resource that we can draw on if there are if there's reason to. I have a question actually. So this is to go to Heartwork and for as the next step. The proposal is going to Heartwork. And we've now collapsed the guilds into this one meeting. So in terms of how does Heartwork take this on? Do we talk? Does the coordination circle have a Heartwork component when we meet every other Thursday? Do we work on it via email? Do we have ad hoc meetings to talk about it? What makes most sense? Probably not talking about it at the coordination circle, because we've got all of these other things to talk about. But I think it could be useful to actually talk through when there's something that goes to a specific guild, how does the guild respond to it?
Mhm.
So I will pass to Ben.
Yeah, and that was my understanding, was that when something comes up that is guild specific, it basically gets tasked out at the coordination meeting. And then it becomes a question for the Heartwork Guild. Do we want to do it via email or set up a meeting? What's the easiest way for us to talk through it? And I don't know. I'm open to either. And if we wanted to set up a meeting, Roland and I now have a combined schedule. So we could just, April, you can just pick a time, and that could be our Heartwork meeting. I think that would probably be the easiest way of doing it. So, but we could also just do it email. April, over to you for thoughts.
Yeah, I like the idea of ad hoc meetings and then email follow up. And I have to say that being reminded by Roland has been very useful for me. And so I would like to also be reminded about this. But it for me, it's a really good way of helping me be accountable, but also reminding me that I'm part of a greater group and I don't have to bear guilt on my own. I can spread the guilt around a bit, or how am I going to get this done kind of question. So over to Ronnie.
That all makes sense to me. And the combined schedule is cool. I don't think I have anything else. Over to Roland.
So April, are you asking me to remind you of something? Because I don't want to do this on a regular basis, like or have this expectation that I'm the holder of your schedule. So if you want me to remind you of something, I can, but ask me.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
I
So
will.
you don't need me to do anything right now.
No. And it's not a generalized expectation either. It's just
Awesome.
it has made a definitive difference at some points in stuff I'm doing. So
Okay.
All right. So I think where we are leaving this is there is a proposal, and April, what we can send, I'll send a link for the Calendly. I'll send that Calendly link to April and Roland with the proposal, and April, you schedule the time, and boom, we're done.
good.
Awesome. All right, moving on then, investment materials and the next steps on the outreach for feedback on the bylaws, etc. I'm not really sure what to say. I guess an update. So Pam, April, Ronnie, and I met last week, and I went through the pitch deck, and I got some really good feedback. I both got feedback that it was good and good feedback on ways to make it better. Since then, I have updated the Substack post. Pam also provided some interesting feedback on the Substack post. And based on that conversation and Pam's feedback, I did some minor edits on that. And I updated the pitch deck, which I'm very proud of and excited by. And I took I used AI to do transcripts from the version that I did before on my own and the version that I did last week with you guys. And then I blended the best of what I said in the two different versions. So there's now a narrative that is pretty complete. It's not just bullet points, it's actually, full sentences and grammar and everything. And that's all feeling pretty like set and ready to go. And we have a list of people that we can start reaching out to. And actually, I feel guilty that I haven't done more of that direct contact, but I was wanting to get materials sort of polished and ready to go. And then the next level of things are we already have some pre-existing materials and they are out of date. So going through them and figuring out where is it worthwhile to update them and that's kind of the next. So as far as I am aware, the next steps are actually I guess I'm brainstorming next steps. One is email to, we have kind of tier 1 and tier 2 people that we want to connect with around the bylaws. So email to them, and we already have a template email for setting that up. And the next thing that an idea that I have that I'm putting out for discussion is scheduling a time to do like basically like we did last week, do the slideshow and really frame it as like a dress rehearsal that where we want people to come and who know what we're doing, who have some background to get their thoughts on it, and sort of set one time, multiple times that could be, we could do the same thing, like pick 2 or 3 times and repeat it, and then record one and have it available, or just do one. Anyhow, yeah, I think that's my thoughts on where things are and some ideas for the next steps, and then questions, comments, etc. Over to you, April.
Well, I was very excited in the session that we did last week, and I remain excited and have quacked about nothing else to everybody I know practically ever since. And I'm really anxious to have some material to actually show to people or to have a recorded pitch deck to refer people to which to refer people, I guess. It's more likely the people I've been talking to will be able to do this in synchronous time. So having something recorded and posted on the website that I could send people to, from my point of view, would be very good. And thank you for all the work and for all the synthesis of all the syntheses that went before this. This is evolving in a very nice way. Thank you. On to Ronnie.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed that session and the PowerPoint, and I'm excited to hear the new and improved script, as it were, and yeah, to be part of more meetings and opportunities for more people to hear it. And yeah, I'm feeling very tired, so I think that's all that my brain can say at this moment. Over to Roland.
I'm wondering, with the new pitch deck, once it's recorded, Ben, would you want feedback, sort of like a final thumbs up or feedback? And if so, what would that look like? And who would you like to get that help from if you did? Over to you.
Clarifying question. Well, actually, maybe not even. I don't. So I think yes. I think we always want to invite feedback because it can always be improved. and it's not a big deal to record another one, it's only when we did it last week, it was only 20 minutes. And I'm hoping to keep it short like that. So I think that, and the way that the narrative ends actually is that it asks for feedback and including, what resonates with you and do you see yourself as part of this? Where do you see yourself fitting in? And what questions do you have? So I feel like that asking for that feedback is also the overture for like what we really want is we want to start a conversation, right? We want to kind of pique people's curiosity and then give them, and that was actually part of the feedback, which I didn't add into the narrative, but no, I think I did. But starting off with there's a lot going on here, and we don't expect you to get this all in one go. This is kind of an overview, and if you're curious at all, we'd love to talk to you. So that
Mm.
kind of framing it from the beginning and at the end that we're always looking for feedback, and it's all about this evolving experiment stuff. So I think the answer to your question is yes. Shall we go once more around, or do we have a clear sense of what needs to happen?
No.
Um, what needs to happen? Well, I guess let me put where um, I guess where I would need help. It's a lot easier to do the recording if there's an audience,
Oh, okay.
and it
Well,
doesn't need to be a big audience. Um, so I guess one of the questions is, do we just put out, like, pick a time and do it again, and then that's it. We got our recording, and whoever shows up, and then we can talk about doing something more later. Okay. That works for me, and I'm available anytime, generally speaking. So should we schedule it for next week? Is that a good sort of, I mean, I can do, and I can, well, I actually wonder, I can just record it, you know. Well,
Well, I was
I'm
wondering if it's a two birds, one stone kind of thing, inviting people that you'd want to get feedback from and record it with them. And you also get feedback where you can go back and re-record or
right.
edit stuff in or out or whatever.
How much lead time should I give people for that? So, like, if I start sending out emails tomorrow to invite people to, we're gonna do this dry run, can you come? Um, they don't need to be there. Some can, that would be great. So yeah, could I send something out tomorrow for something later next week? That be okay?
yep.
Anyone have any preferences on times or anything?
So
Wednesday would be best for me during the day.
Any other votes?
My
Roland, did you want
schedule,
to be part of it?
I don't have to be.
But did you want to be? I never know whether this is in the category of things that you would rather have red hot pokers in your eyes than.
Honestly, meetings in general are red hot pokers in my eyes. Uh, and I also like to participate. So
put on your safety glasses.
my face armor.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so I'll just take that under advisement. And we'll go from there. So that's what I'll start sending out emails tomorrow to invite people to a dry run of our pitch deck and then set something up for next week.
Great.
All right. Well, then, are we good on that topic? So let's do twice around. Any last pieces of business, any loose ends before we wrap things up? And then we'll have a chance to check out. So any loose ends, April?
No, my ends have all been tied down and sealed off. Good. On to Ronnie.
I do not have anything to add. Over to Roland.
I am I've started the process of signing up for the Food Planet Prize
Ah,
thing. And it's asking for a description of the project. And actually, I wouldn't mind doing a once around to find out. I don't know if I'm uncertain of listing it as the Lifeboat Academy, which is the larger project, or the Farmistery, which is actually the project that needs money.
We've settled on this. There is an answer now. And the answer is the Farmistery is the experiment, the flagship experiment of the Lifeboat Academy. So the
Okay.
Lifeboat Academy is the organization that is
Great.
running the experiment that needs the money.
Okay, so the experiment needs the money, and it
It's the
is
Lifeboat Academy that
the
is
Lifeboat
applying.
Academy that's running the experiment. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. And likewise, I think it's lifeboat.academy is the website that we're pointing people to, so it just makes sense to keep the naming consistent.
Cool. Because there's also the Farmistery page on the website, but that's okay. I understand it. It totally makes sense, and I agree.
Well,
Can I
and I
add
think
can
go ahead. Yeah.
I add a point in Break Circle? Because also there's the thing that could happen where it doesn't happen at Spalding Valley Farm, but it happens somewhere else. And so if the Lifeboat Academy has the money, then the Farmistery could morph into the Farmistery somewhere else, or the blah
Right.
blah at blah blah. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's how I
Yeah.
have been thinking about it.
yeah, that makes sense. And Roland, did you want some help on the project description? Is that
No.
what?
Not yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I think I'm really enjoying the website. It seems to have evolved into a very nice summary of some things. Oh, and also the narrative, but that goes with the pitch deck. But I feel like the language you need is on the website for that project description. Cool. All right, so that takes us to loose ends. So now, last thoughts for the good of the cause. How are you gonna celebrate the rest of the day? April, over to you.
I'm going to have a fine meal. And I really wish that I was in Roland's kitchen because I'm pretty sure it would be fine and I would also learn something there. But I'm in my own kitchen, so that's what I'm doing for the rest of the day. On to Ronnie.
I'm gonna try to relax after a very hectic week. I'm gonna try really hard to relax. So we'll see how it goes. Over to
Gonna
Roland.
stress yourself out about being relaxed.
Dinner is how I'm spending the rest of my day. Over to Ben.
I'm gonna go wander around outside a little bit. I think I've had a lot of indoor time today, and it's a lovely day. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of a stroll. And I'm going to not work hard at relaxing. See how that goes. All right. Well, thank you all. And as always, it's a pleasure. And we'll see you soon, at least by next week.
Great. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.